Okay, guys, in this lesson, we're going to teach you how to do shorthand for your lab values. So I know that you're looking at this slide and you're saying, hey, what do all these lines mean? Well, these line structures are all framework for how you're going to create these shorthand references for your labs when you get them back on your patient. So these are sometimes referred to as maybe skeletons, or they're also known as fish bones. But all they are is a shorthand way for you to remember your labs. It's a way for you to have them readily available, so they don't have to be fumbling through the chart. It allows you to have like a quick reference. It also allows you to familiarize yourself with your patient's labs, so that if you get new labs, you can actually take a look at what they were, or if you get a critical call from the lab and say, hey, this lab is out of range, you can quickly reference it so you can go back and do some more investigation. One of the things that I want you to remember is as you do this, you're going to circle those abnormal labs, and we're going to go through how you do it. But I'm going to give you some tips as we go through, and we're going to run through some practice so you understand how each one works. So there are two typical skeletons that we look at when we're looking at this. So we're looking at the Chem 7 and the Chem 10, and this is going to be your Chem 7 or your BMP, your basic metabolic panel here. So you're going to have you have 7 here, and then you have an additional 3. So this makes up your Chem 10. So let's say you get your values back on your patient, and you need to know where they go. This is how I remember. Always start with sodium in the top left-hand corner. And then it's next to chloride, because your sodium and chloride always go together. And the other thing you remember is your potassium always goes with your electrolytes. So that's how I remember these 3. Then your glucose goes over here in this window. And then you've got 2 spaces. So you've got your BUN that goes on top, and then your creatinine in the bottom, because these 2 are kidney values. So that's how I remember those. And then lastly, you've got your CO2, which is the last one. Sometimes you'll see it as bicarb, but that's where that last space is going to go. And so let's say you get a Chem 10, and so you need to know where these other 3 values go. So the way I remember this is counterclockwise, starting from the top, alphabetical order. So the last things you have left, your calcium, your mag, and your phos. Calcium goes on top, and then you read left to right. Mag is before phos, so M before P. So that's how I remember those. So let's actually do this. So here's your labs back on your patient. So let's start at the top. Let's start actually over here. So the first thing we know is we need to look at our sodium and chloride. So sodium is 142. And then you've got your chloride, which goes next to it, is 106. And then we're going to follow that with potassium, which for this patient is 4.6. And you've got your glucose next. That's 91. And so now we need to be in creatinine, because we need our kidney value. So you've got 9 up top, and then 0.8 down here in the bottom. And then lastly, we want to fill this in with our bicarb, which is 25 over here. So then we've got the other 3 values. So you've got your calcium, your mag, and your phos. So calcium goes here. Oops, sorry. So your calcium for this patient is going to be 10.3. And you've got 2 for your mag, and then 3 for your phos. So all of these are normal values, and nothing is out of range. So, but let's come back and say that, let's say your sodium was 150, right? So we're going to come over here to your sodium, and we're going to say it's 150. Well, this is an abnormal value. So what we want to do is we want to circle this. We want to say, hey, in this skeleton, we know that these numbers are all great except for the sodium. So it's a good way to quickly reference what's going on. So I know there was a lot in the last slide, but now that you have some sort of idea of what's going on, let's look at how we do our CBC. So this is a skeleton for the CBC, and there are lots of components to the CBC, but we're going to take a look at the really important ones. So you have all these values over here. How do we get these? Well, first spot is for your white blood cells. Those are really important. That's going to tell us about infection, inflammation, leukemia, anemia, that kind of stuff. And then you've got your platelets over here, because we want to know about clotting. If we look at our CBC, we want to know, is our patient anemic? Do they have some sort of infection or inflammation? Do they have some sort of clotting issue? Those are the 2 things we look at. So the other 2 values that you're going to look at are hemoglobin and hematocrit. So you're going to put your hemoglobin on top, and you're going to put your hematocrit in the bottom. That's how this is how the skeleton looks. So let's plug this number in. So because white cells are counted actually in thousands, you're not going to put 5,900. What you're actually going to put is 5.9 here. So then we go to our platelets, which is over here. Again, these are measured in thousands, so we don't want to put that. So we're going to put 174,000. Now, if you know that this number is actually like less than 100,000, or let's say it's 20,000, what you're going to do is actually write out like 20K and circle it, because you want to make sure that you know that what the actual value is. So look at your hemoglobin. Hemoglobin in this patient is 15. Hematocrit is 42.6%. So why are we not putting the red cells? Well, red cells are typically about a third of your hemoglobin. So 1/3 of the 15 here is going to be about 5. And in this patient, we could see it's 5.2, which is pretty close, right? So let's look at liver function tests. And there are a couple different skeletons that you can use, but we're going to use the one that looks like an X, because it's going to help us kind of figure out down here what's going on. This would be a liver function test that we get back on our patient, but this is how we're going to do the skeleton. So starting up top, you're going to have actually 2 values in here. You're going to have their total bilirubin, and then you're going to have your direct bilirubin. Then we go clockwise, and you're going to plug in your ALT value here. And then you have your alk phos, and then you have your AST over here. This is not as easy to remember as some of the other skeletons, so you're going to need to practice with this one, and you're going to need to practice with these just in generally. But in order to remember which one is which, either figure out a good way to maybe make a little sticky note, or just do practice with this. But this is how these values fit in. Total bilirubin, 0.1. Direct bilirubin, 0.1. Then we've got starting over here, you've got your ALT, which is 20, normal value. Again, and you also see this thing flag if these values were high or low. Then you're going to go across, and you've got you're going to go down, actually. Sorry, you got your 50 for your alk phos, and then you've got your AST of 25. Again, these are all normal values, so we're not going to circle any one of them. Now, like with your liver function test, the ABG is going to require a little bit more practice, but what you remember is you're going to go right down the line. This is typically how your ABGs are going to be presented in your labs. So your first value is pH, and you're going to follow that with your CO2, and then you've got your actual oxygen level, then you've got your bicarb, you got your oxygen saturation, and then you've got your base excess. So our values for this patient, let's do some practice. You've got a value of 7.4 for the pH, and then your PCO2 is 40. Your oxygen is 98. Your bicarb is going to be 25. Your oxygen saturation is 99, and then your base excess for this patient is 0. Again, none of these values are abnormal, so we're not going to circle any of them. But this is going to take some practice, and you're just going to have to work with this and put that practice in, so that you can make sure that you're getting all these values in these skeletons, because you want to use these tools to help you out. And the last one we're going to look at is coag studies. This one's going to be a little bit easier to remember because you only have 3 values. And the first 2 are PT and PTT. So your PT always goes with your PTT. This is called APTT, which is like an activated PTT. Same value, same thing. So you're going to get PT here. PTT goes here. And then last page, you've got your INR, because you know these 3 values go together. So your PT is going to be 11 seconds. Your APTT is going to be 33, and your INR goes down here, and that's 1. So all of these values are normal, and so we're not going to circle any of them. But let's say your patient's PTT comes back at 120 seconds. And we're looking at heparin therapy. So this is where your skeleton is going to be your best friend. So you got this PTT comes back to 120. Say, hey, we know, especially because you're going to be making adjustments to maybe a heparin drip. So if you quickly learn this reference, it's going to be your best friend especially when you're doing heparin drips. So for today's nursing concepts, we really focused on lab values and communication by using these shorthand methods. And that's going to reinforce your ability to quickly reference them. So let's recap. Guys, you're going to have to practice. There's just no way around it in order to use these things, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. The next thing you want to do is circle those abnormal values, and so that you can flag them for yourself. One thing that I want to mention is that reference ranges aren't always going to be the same. It's really to your benefit to make sure that you look at those reference ranges and pay attention to what those are in your facility. And you also want to pay attention to trends. Keep them handy, make a routine. Start at the top of the shift, take a look at your labs, and then when you go back, you're going to do it the same way every time so you always know what those values are. And help yourself. Use them. They're going to be your best friend, and you're going to be able to provide better care for your patients. I know this lesson was a little bit longer than some of the others, but just know that you guys did great. I know that you're going to use these things every day. Make sure you check out all the resources attached to this lesson. Now go out and be your best selves today. And as always, happy nursing.